Welcome to Dealer Talk with Jen Suzuki, where inspiration meets action. This is your spot to grow, level up, and lead with fresh ideas. From sales to service, from frontline teams to executives, we're dropping weekly knowledge and insight to keep your store sharp, relevant, and profitable. Let's get into it. Welcome back, listeners. I can't wait to share with you a guest that I have connected only through social media on. But, you know, as an auto coach, a trainer, really a long-term dealer advocate, I got 20 years on the line here, and I'm going to call a play for the frontline BDC internet sales performance. Today, I've got a real treat. Joining us is Greg Iverson, and he's a veteran in automotive, BDC, and marketing leader, and he's worked with some heavy hitters. He's worked with some real big dealership names out there throughout our country, and he's trained under the legendary Tom Stuker. And over the years, he's got a lot of tactics, and he's seen a lot of systems, and he's executed a lot of, I'm sure, processes that even run parallel amongst high-performing stores that I can't wait to squeeze and think about how I can take this information and move the needle in the dealerships myself. So a lot of smart, actionable insights from Greg on my posts, and I just had to get him on air. I see him always commenting on my posts. I really always like what he has to say. So just real deal knowledge you could use. Greg, welcome.
Hey, thank you for the intro. Hopefully I live up to it. But Jen, I'm a fan, and obviously saw you on LinkedIn. And yeah, I mean, you know, most people are on LinkedIn, and there's a lot of, you know, I think self-promoters, and there's a lot of people doing a number of things. But what I really like is seeing you in the store, making the difference. The whiteboards, I'm always like expanding on my phone, looking at your material, seeing if I can, you know, nick anything, as they say in England. I can, you know, what do they say? Good artists copy and great artists steal. So no. It's a pleasure to be here today. Love the industry, love my career. And I love your podcast too.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, what was it about you or your sales process that landed you in so many high-performing stores? And you can even name drop if you like, you know, because I think that when you work with big names like you have, you know, you get a chance to see what it takes to become a nationally ranked dealership. So what was it about you or your sales process that got you in these big name stores?
Well, you know, I think the first thing is obviously location. You know, being in Los Angeles, you know, you've got some of the biggest, you know, maybe the biggest market in the world.
For sure.
You know, I was told there's more cars in LA County than the country of Russia. So, you know, there's like 25 million cars in LA County, which is crazy. It's about 4,000 square miles. But obviously, you know, geography helped me. I think for me, it was a personal thing, just, you know, being competitive, playing sports, race go-karts and dirt bikes as a kid. And when I got into it accidentally, which I think most people, I call it the accidental business. Most people, you know, unless it's family, you know, for me, it was like, I want the action. I want to be in the big stores. And it wasn't nothing against smaller stores. Part of it was, you know, money. Hey, I can make more money. Part of it was brand. It's kind of like a restaurant. Where's your location and what's your menu? You know, selling Buicks in Hemet is a market, but, you know, being at Norm Reeves Honda Cerritos in Los Angeles, the world's biggest Honda store, for me was exciting. So I think it was just kind of the action. As far as getting there, like anything, working your way up. I got back from Australia and landed with North Hollywood Toyota, which at the time, 25 years ago, was a pretty big store, Don Hankey's store. And Chris Ashworth, one of my mentors, as we called him, Lord Cashworth, English guy that worked his way up, literally driving cars from the East Coast to the West Coast to being a part owner. But just, you know, going from one Toyota store to a bigger one, Keys Toyota, and then looking out for jobs, you know, looking whether it was in the online or word of mouth. You know, I heard there was an opening at Norm Reeves in Cerritos. I think I was one of 30 or 40 people that submitted an application. Sure. And it's like playing the lottery. You got to be in it to win it. So submitted my app, did a few phone interviews, got in, met with Vince and Brad, went through a few interviews and was lucky enough to get started there. And, you know, it's like anything. Once you get in, you know, you got to make sure you stay in.
Mm. Well, tell us about some of the sales processes. Tell me about some of the things that you've seen that a lot of times can separate maybe a low performer to becoming a top performer. Something that you've seen along your journey that you'd be willing to share with us. Maybe these are things that even little things that people like just oversee. They're the small oversights that sometimes we don't even see the easy stuff,
Right.
but, I have a lot of listeners that are frontline, a lot of managers out there. And I'm just curious, what your approaches have been, your secret weapons, if you will, in sales process that maybe sometimes can separate, those that are really trying to become that top performer. How do you get there?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, you have to have some type of process. I mean, you
Mm,
have to have. Stuker used to say. I mean, his famous line was, "Have a plan, work a plan." So,
yeah, that's good.
but then again, that doesn't mean that your plan was great. I mean, Napoleon had a plan, and it didn't work out for him too well. So, hopefully, this plan is based on some type of data or some type
Hmm.
of empirical evidence where it's worked before. And
Hmm.
I think it's like having a policy first is that, this is what we're doing. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the end goal really is to sell more cars, service more cars, ultimately create more happy customers, ultimately have really happy employees, because that's really ultimately what it's about is employee retention. And
Hmm.
hopefully you get a buy-in. My forte was more so internet and BDC, which was a little bit. I mean, I know on your resume you were at Auto Bytel. I
Hmm.
loved Auto Bytel back in the day
Hmm.
because you had exclusive leads. Those leads only
Exactly.
went to my dealership, and it was up to me to make them or break them. But
Hmm.
it's just stuff that I've learned just by good managers is that you have to have a plan, you have to have people work it, and really it's expectations, setting expectations for staff, whether it's an internet manager or a BDC manager, to follow the process. I don't want to say having management, more so leadership.
Mm.
Leadership involved where you want to create an environment where people want to come to work and they're excited about coming to work, and that's kind of complicated because that can be based on pay plans and management and workloads and all of those things. So I think the main thing is having a plan, working a plan. You're going to have good days, you're going to have off days, and mainly just being consistent. Show up every day on time, ready to go, and good things happen.
Mm. Yeah. Also, good advice. And I just also have to piggyback on that and ask you, so in thinking about the dealerships that you've worked in and looking at some of the plans and the processes that people have designed and that they're executing and working from, what are some of the key components that you would say has made a plan really effective? I mean, is there certain part? I'll give you a quick example. So a lot of times I say to managers, you guys gotta be the trainers. You guys gotta be the coaches. It can't just be like, oh, you hire somebody to come in like me and think that everything's going to change.
Right.
Really, it's about consistency and being able to teach messaging and to level up skill sets and really nurture team members' success. As you mentioned, that being such a key, piece to success is employee retention. Well, how does that happen? Well, you keep teaching them new stuff. You nurture their success and where does that come from? Well, it's teaching lessons, coaching, holding them accountable.
Right.
And I feel like that's a part of a plan, a part of a process that really helps get to that next level of success. And my high performing stores, the ones that are nationally ranked, I would say that they're very consistent at stuff like this. But surely there's other aspects that have also stood out in the pool of options because there's so many things to tackle. It's
Right.
coaching and training is just one part of it. What have you
Right.
seen?
Well, you know what? Those are a lot of great points, Jen, and I think you're right. The big groups. I mean, I've been lucky enough to be in these groups. Norm Reeves Honda. We used to joke, the biggest Honda store west of Jupiter. And basically it was and still is, I think,
Mm-hmm.
CarPro's Kia. I think the
Mm-hmm.
second largest Kia group. Out of Seattle, but a lot of stores in
Right.
LA. Lucky enough to work for Juan Alarcon and that whole team. The one thing, I mean, there's a lot of similarities. I think one of them is hiring. And,
Mm,
I believe that really the time to fire people is before you hire them.
mm,
Make sure that you have a good hiring process. It's not laid on just one person. And people are bought into the process and realizing that adding these additions to our team, it's really important. Just because a guy sold 20 cars doesn't mean he's a guy we want on our floor. He might have been through 120 ups. I mean, I remember going through this, looking up at the upboard, the old school upboards. And for me, it's all about closing percentages. And it's usually the guys with the highest units are the ones that are burning through the opportunities.
Totally.
Yeah, cherry picking and, whatever. So with that being said, hire smart, have a process where at least you get them back on a second day, make sure they can show up, integrate other managers. And the training, as you talk, Norm Reeves has this really cool thing. And this is, I started with them in 2008, Monday through Thursday. There's 2 shifts. On the weekends, which is a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there's 3 shifts. But the 2 shifts, the opening shift shows up 20 minutes early and they do walkarounds. Okay. And it's generally with a desk manager, and generally with a desk manager that wants to do this. Okay. And has some skills doing this. And in the afternoon, it would be a conference room doing role plays, ring, phone calls, going over handling objections. And the main thing is, I think creating an environment where you don't have POWs, you don't have prisoners of war. The afternoon shift would usually get lunch. There'd be a quick, sandwiches there for you. You'd have a manager who was versed in this. I would be involved in it. But yeah, CarPros Kia was the same thing, Monday through Thursday. And the interesting thing they did that I never saw in big stores in LA, usually the big pump up meetings are on Friday. CarPros Kia, they did their pump up Saturday morning. So no matter what store you're at, and I remember going, hey, what's up with this? I'm used to the Friday morning, Friday afternoon. Back in the day, going over the newspaper ad, the online ad, here's our specials, here's our brass rings, blah, blah, blah. He goes, no, I want to make sure that my guys don't stay out late and have too much fun on Friday night, and that they're ready to go for the weekend. So I think there's a few ways to do it, but generally, that training aspect is really imperative, that you have some type of environment where you're constantly improving skills.
Yeah, I love that. I'm glad that you could solidify that too, because for me, I find it's missing in a lot of the dealerships that are out there. The high performing stores, they got this thing on lock. And it's not one manager oftentimes that's being responsible for this initiative. There's, it's about rotating your managers. So everybody's kind of watching other managers' strengths as they conduct these trainings and coachings and having fun with the contests and the incentives and everything like this. Because you don't want these to be like a grind out. It's not like you're trying to put people on blast. You're trying to boost people up and motivate them, and it's got to be something that I think you want to get this skill set down for all your managers, and rotate the task so it's not always on one person's lap. But this is definitely something I've noticed as high performing stores are really good at. Hey, so you trained with Tom Stuker, and I Tom Stuker is a name that's really been a legacy. And in my career, I'm in phones, so
don't forget Joni. Don't forget Joni Stuker too.
That right. I hear her name frequently as well.
She was amazing. She is amazing.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I've never met her. I've never met
Tom.
She's
amazing.
So surely there's been some principles from him or even Joni that shaped, how you coach BDC agents or how you work with internet reps even today. Is there any kind of mindset or process that were takeaways from these guys that have stuck with you? Something that's really resonated or something that you've executed even with dealership teams that have, maybe moved the needle?
Right. No, you know what? There's a number of things. And before I forget, Tom Stuker's known for a lot of things, but I'm not sure if many people know this. He has flown more commercial miles.
We know.
Yeah. 25
His
million.
name is on United Plane.
Yeah. His name. He's been on Seinfeld episodes. When I started with him, Grant Cardone had just left about a year before. This was 2001, 2002. And I was brought on to do BDCs and internet revamps and startups, basically from Chicago, Hoffman Estates, down to Fort Myers, Florida. And the one thing was just definitely having a plan, having a process plan, having that plan based on some type of data, working that plan. And as far as he had a process he called TNP, take no prisoners. And
Mm-hmm.
I really liked it. I mean, people have to make phone calls. You got to pick up the phone. You got to be able to make these calls. I remember you were asking me something about, what are one of the myths, or we can talk about that later too.
Mm-hmm.
A script is, we're not in Hollywood. I don't want you to read a script like you're in a movie. For me, it's more of a guideline,
Mm-hmm.
that lets you know a direction that you're going in, and you want to sound natural. But, having people train properly, having a TO process in the beginning, where if they get stuck, they can maybe TO a call to a manager, having somebody listen to these calls
Mm-hmm.
afterwards. And, for me, it's coaching. It's not criticizing. And I used to tell people, I'd love payday because I'd be in my office holding an envelope, and it would be like, this is a reflection of what you've done for the past 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's heavy. It's heavy, which is great. And I tell you what, you might think I'm a little bit of a grind. We have fun here. But if I'm more concerned about your paycheck than you are, there's an issue here, So, for me, it's all about one thing. It's like it's circular logic or pretzel logic. The way we're happy in this business is when we're making money. And the way we make money is by being happy. You can't sell cars and service cars and gain business if you're not in a good mood. So it's a little bit tricky, but just, focus on that. Focus on being in a good mood, focus on doing your job, being consistent, and good things happen.
Yeah, and let's not forget that you started, having a plan, which you then turned into, well, you should have some sign of a guide. And if phone calls is what's slaying the game, we should really be dialed into that, whether that's call evaluation, it's called coaching. Somebody has to listen to these, or having a TO process. That was strong, by the way. A lot of dealerships don't have a TO process on the phones, but that's where the majority of the customers are. And a lot of people are doing outbound calls, to internet leads. And also for me, I'm always big on outbound prospecting. I like to work the database, and it's like, who's evaluating these calls? Who's coaching on them? Who's incentivizing on them? I love this. And I love that you talked about having a game plan and specifically a call guide. It doesn't need to be like robo vibes over here. We're not trying to like live in the 80s, but you should at least know where you're headed, and you have something that keeps you on track, on pace.
Right. And I think once people, it's like anything. I mean, I had input from 5 different directions when I first, I started on the line selling cars and how to make phone calls, how to take phone calls. Once you get something that works, it's like cooking a recipe, you stick with that, and you can amend it, and you can make it better. And yeah, I used to laugh, I'd see the GMs like, sir, are you in a good mood today? Yeah, I'm in a good mood. Do you want to get depressed? Not really. Let's listen to some phone calls. Let's listen to some calls today, some inbound sales calls. So yeah, it's just one of these things where
no, they always wanted to fire everybody. It's such a stigma.
Right.
I think they were
You're off
looking
the
at it all the
phone.
wrong way. Yeah,
Yeah, and
exactly. It's a punishment.
Yeah, and in California, you're like, well, sir, that actually could be a lawsuit, because like if we're taking Johnson off the phone and Anderson can take phone calls, I mean, is that like favoritism? So no, and the one thing I talk to people all the time, I mean, this is part of my life for 30 years almost. I've watched kind of the transgression of it goes from Joe Verdi, Jackie Cooper, Tom Stuker, Traver, all these guys that were into the training, and now we're getting into the technology. I remember AVV web control. Ooh,
me too. That was the first
one.
one.
What a CRM this is. And we're at the point now where we have all this technology, we have all this data, we can drill down to a microscopic granular level and come up with all this stuff, which is great. But it's kind of like a football team having, like the water boy, Henry Winkler had all those plays that he made that were unbelievable. But if you don't have somebody to execute them, it's just like, I think the focus eventually is going to have to go back in a lot of ways to what you're doing, which is how are we going to take these game plans and make them work? Because AI is not going to do it all.
Well, yeah, exactly. And AI has its role, has its place. But the truth is that, you're never going to be able to make those connections, be able to, just do things that humans are only going to be able to do. And I also believe that the phones is one of the most critical skills to have if you're in sales, particularly dealership sales. And I find that that right attitude. Well, I mean, I actually had somebody in my class today, and he said, "Jen, tell me, listen, I'm a serious person. I talk very seriously. Do you have some advice for me? Because I hear what you're saying. You're like all friendly, casual vibes. And I'm pressing it because nobody wants to talk to somebody that's all stiff and uptight, buttoned up, trying to talk too professional. I mean, that's intimidating. It makes me want to ask you, just give me a price. Don't even call me. Email me. OTD. Don't even, I'll call you." Like it
Right.
creates attitude from people.
Right.
And I said to him, I said, listen, you got to go in and have some fun. Okay. Where's that smile at? You look so serious. Like, that's intimidating. I don't
Right.
like that. I'm already scared of you. and
Right.
loosen up a little, laugh a little bit. Like, how do you talk to your friends like that? you know Vibe on that,
Right.
call on that, like that feel of, hey, I know this person. It's got to
Right.
feel comfortable.
Well, ultimately, you're helping somebody out with a problem or, whether it's a small one or a little one, they need a new car, they need service. And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, for me, it's, people talk, when I got into the business, is you have to build rapport, I mean, you have to find common ground. Is he a golfer? Is he from Chicago, whatever?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got to
I
connect
mean,
with people.
yeah, I remember that stuff kind of made sense, but I think today, and this is, I think the good thing about technology and everything that's happening is that
Yeah.
if you want to be like someone that somebody wants, be an expert at what you do. Be an expert. I mean, that's the
Mm.
best way to build rapport. How many times do any of us go out, we want to buy this, and nobody knows anything about the product. They don't even know like where they're working at, so,
Mm.
I think you can gain rapport because ultimately you want to get that person in the store. You want to be able to help them. Some people are very serious. You might want to stay a little bit serious, but generally people like to have fun. It's a fun
Yeah.
process getting a vehicle.
I always say you got to loosen up their buttons because
Oh, yeah.
if because you got to get your customer laughing. You got to get them to loosen up a little bit because people have so much apprehension as it is before they even step foot out there, into the dealership. They're just already skeptics. You already have a lot to contend with, and that
Right.
smile that could just break down walls immediately. And I have to ask you something. Okay, so on this topic, because for me, I feel like attitude is equally as important as the words I teach or the
Right.
process that I teach, and you might have a person that, yeah, okay, so in your view, what separates a BDC agent or an internet rep who consistently hits targets from one who struggles? Do you think that it ties back to attitude, mentality? Is it process? Is it having the right questions? Is it what is it exactly that you would say? What if you were to pinpoint it?
Well, I think you hit a bunch of them right on the head. I mean, for me, it's kind of like everything's coupled. Everything that you just said is intention. For
Mm,
me, it's like, what is your intention? If
mhm.
you're hungry and you go out, your intention is to go get some food and
Right,
not be hungry anymore. If your
right.
intention is to come into work and be productive, you're going to gather all of these skills that has been taught to you. And
Mhm,
intention for me is like almost, it's actually stuff I read decades ago. One of my favorite, he passed on, Dr. Wayne Dyer.
mm,
And he had a great line. He said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So
mm.
it's kind of like when it's how you look at something, it's how you solve a problem. And for me, the difference between like
That's
the top
good.
performers, yeah, and I have people ask me, I go, you know what, this is the business. I mean, I have an uncle, God rest his soul. He was a pediatrician for 40 years, served in the army. I mean, there were years I made more money than him. And he's
Mhm.
like, you have an AA in accounting from the Navy. I go, it's sales. Sales is like, but
Right.
the thing is, it's one of these industries that you can do whatever you want. You can make as much money as like you can determine your own paycheck. But it's just one of these things where, if you come into this with a good attitude and you're consistent and you
Mhm,
stick to your guns and you have good
mhm,
teachers and you're
mhm,
willing to learn. And
mhm,
the other thing that for me is kind of like, you can't really get into philosophical stuff, but when you're managing people and you have a team and they have problems and they come in late and you're dealing with your staff, you want to be a manager, you want to be a team leader. I look at things a little bit different. And for me, it's what they call the have do be analogy. And I think Western culture kind of teaches, if I could just have the job and have the money and have the girlfriend or boyfriend, then I could be really who I want to be. And then I can end up doing what I want to do. Where I think it's like you want to be happy first. You want to be grateful for where you're at. You want to be, content knowing that you're going to grow. You don't want to judge where you're at right now being is where you're going to be in the future. So I think there's a lot of things that, people get into this industry, like with COVID, the biggest complaint now is you have all these new people that came into the industry and sold cars at 10 grand over sticker during COVID.
Right.
And they sold 5 cars and made 12 grand and they think this is the industry. So,
Yeah, that
setting
was a great era.
expectations. Yep. Setting expectations and, coaching people, you talk about the 10 minutes. Tom used to talk about 5 minutes,
Wow.
spend 5 quality minutes a day with your staff.
Yeah,
It's important.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And if
even
you can have
one-on-ones.
yeah, one-on-ones. I mean, and I see you do it. And I used to do like, when people are in a slump, we, at least on the West Coast, we call it the wheel, the wheel turns, today I had 3 ups and I sold 3 cars. The day before I had 6 ups and I sold nothing. 2 of them drove me crazy. I needed a brain scan afterwards and blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
Is just stay positive, know that the wheel turns. And other than that, managers jumping in. When you see somebody stagnating, just come on, let's make some calls together. Show
Yes.
me, and this was another thing that I think that I missed on in one of your earlier questions is kind of a basketball analogy for BDCs. It's like, what are we doing first thing when we come in? Well, for me, the easiest shot is a layup, and a layup is confirming appointments. So we're going to confirm all the appointments today. We're not going to be scared about calling. Dude, why aren't you calling and confirming? Well, the appointment was kind of on the edge. Well, listen, if it's on the edge, you want to call and confirm
Exactly.
it. Right? I mean, you just want to sit around and twiddle your thumbs and wait. So the first thing is calling, confirming appointments. The second thing is even harder. Let's call the missed appointments. Let's call the people that were supposed to be here. And let's not make a phone call that says, hey, what happened? I was here until 9 and I waited for you. And,
Hey, life gets in the way. I'm calling a reschedule. We'll make sure you're taken care of.
And then hitting your lead. So I think, when people are stagnating and they're in a slump, get them back to the basics. And really the best people, like you said, what's the difference is people master basic skills. I mean, there's no rocket science here. I think what we do is complicated as a business. I mean, when you look at the ins and outs of meeting somebody, running their credit, appraising their trade, taking that car away, paying off the loan, putting them in a new car, making sure their insurance, making sure it's not fraud, making sure this, that, whatever, making sure the business office has DMV. I mean, there's so many complicated things, but when you look at salespeople and service people, for me, mastering the basics, knowing how to gain rapport, knowing how to use the phone, knowing how to integrate text. I love that you talk about GPT for emails. Mastering these basic skills, you'll end up being a master.
Well, that's great advice, and I have to ask you one last thing because you've been out there for as long as I have, and you've seen a lot of different ways to do things. You've seen a lot of ways to get to the end game, and here's something that I find a lot of people steer away from, and I tend to find that people are steering a little bit more away from the phone than I've ever seen them in my career because it's just a generational change. People think, oh, the text, the emails, it's easier. They get scared of rejection and blah blah blah. But for me, you got to call people. In fact, you got to cold call people. It's not just calling people. You got to be able to go in there. If I'm a new salesperson, I don't have a database. I need to be able to go in there and, pull a list and introduce myself and get things cooking, ask the right questions and blah, blah, blah. But, sometimes people just need to hear, what are today's skill sets that are really going to help a salesperson achieve a top high performing status? What do you think those skill sets are today? And I'm sure you're going to say it's the phones, but there's surely other things. And maybe it's not the phones. I mean, I think it's phones.
Well, I think more, no. Part of it is phones. You got to realize too, maybe different Gen Z wants to deal through text. You're going through TikTok to do advertising. People of my generation born in the 60s, we like the phone. Text for me, I love text, but I can ignore it immediately. I don't have to reply. If somebody's texting me, it's not urgent. So, I think ultimately it's really what I was taught when I got in. This is a people business. What I was taught is this is a people business and this is a parts business. And I remember saying, what do you mean parts? And he goes, well, the average car's got about 20,000 parts, and they put those 20,000 parts together and they sell it as a car. And then the service department replaces those parts. So, we're not really selling cars. We are, but the problem is we're dealing with people and you have to connect on different ways. I think having an overall kind of outward kind of, if you're an introvert, it's probably the wrong thing. I mean,
Mm.
wanting to talk to people, eventually these people are going to show up in the showroom and they're going to have to see you. And you've probably had some great contacts and great phone calls. And hopefully it's all been great information. You're not lying and, okey doking people in. You're going to be face to face. And that's really where you see great salespeople. They know how to serve a customer, how to do a proper walk around, how to appraise a trade. And I love that you always talk about incorporating a second manager. On the phone, I used to do that all the time. More than half the people have a trade. Sir, when you come in, I'm going to have our used car director immediately look at your car, so I'll save you time and we'll get two things done at once. So I think, in a lot of ways, I think it's human history. We're going to go back to old skill school with old skills, which is people skills, getting people to
Yeah.
trust you, looking them in the eye, knowing that, that they can believe you. And if they don't believe you, they're not going to trust you. They have to like you a little bit. So you have to have some personable skills, be courteous, don't say any thing stupid, offer them a drink, maybe have a sense of humor. So I think all this technology pulls people apart in a way. And I think there'll be a pushback where people skills are going to be more relevant.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear you say that because I think that everybody could brush up on those people skills. I think that's a really good thing for even managers today to be focused on. You'd be surprised at how many people just don't really know how to get people to trust them or how to boost confidence or how to get people to like you or how to get people to respect you. These are all great topics that a lot of times I don't think we focus on enough in the dealership, which, these could be seen as just even basic skills at building
Right.
rapport, building relationships.
Yeah, it's just kind of, people know immediately you go in to buy something and within 5 seconds you're like, yeah, I don't trust this guy. It
Yeah.
can be something as quick as a look. So yeah, I think as technology, pulls people apart and allows them to do things without interaction, it's great in a lot of ways. But, having those social skills, we're social animals and being able to shake somebody's hand, look them in the eye and get a gut feeling about them is a better skill than anybody that's like, yeah, dude, I do the most unbelievable GPT text messages. My response rate, yeah, but how many people came in and how many bought a car from you? Is ultimately what's going to be the
Oh,
question or
yeah.
the answer.
Mm. Yeah. And listen, people buy from people, and
Right.
it's less likely to be through a text thread.
That's one number that has stayed the same. Like 75% of the people asked, why did you buy the car? It's like, I trusted and liked the salesperson. And then
Absolutely.
obviously repeat and referral goes to 80%. I've already bought 5 cars from him. I trust him. I
Yeah.
have a BMW guy. I've gotten 6 cars from him. So yeah, it's just building these relationships and kind of, your intention. If your intention is this is just a job, you're probably not going to do well. But if your intention is to have a career and move up the ladder, one of the best ways to move up the ladder is sell a bunch of cars with great CSI, have repeat customers, show upper management, how to manage a client base, and they'll put you in charge of managing other people managing a client base, so simple stuff in a way.
Mm. Yeah, I love this business. It's actually relatively simple and it's easy to move up if you do
Right.
those things that you just mentioned. And anyway, I have to tell you, Greg, it's such a pleasure to kick it with you today. And thank you so much for
Me
sharing
too.
such tangible, just battle tested insights, everything from daily routines and management perspectives and sales process and, just differences in becoming a high performer or a low performer. I think you just gave us a lot of good angles here. Even just hiring. I love that. There's so many great things that you mentioned. A lot of experience behind those words. I really appreciate your playbook and you certainly walk the walk, Greg. So thanks again for being here. Thanks for everybody for tuning in today and just yeah, thank you.
Well, no. Let me thank you, Jen. I thank you and everybody out there. It's a great industry, can change your life, and it's like
It
anything.
certainly does.
Your focus will determine what happens. And no, Jen, I love your stuff, and hopefully we talk again soon one day.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And thank you so much for always commenting and all your support online. Like, I really appreciate that. All right. Well,
Hey,
take it easy,
I'm
Greg.
kind of, not to be obnoxious, but
Yeah.
I'm kind of sick of seeing this is what I'm having for lunch today at the airport. So that stuff is fine, but I love seeing the substantial stuff. But no, Jen, your stuff is great, and
Yeah.
people are lucky to have you in their stores.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, listen, I don't like to waste people's time. So I want to make sure that things I'm posting, things I'm talking about, these are real things that I see move the needle, real things I'm doing in dealerships.
Right.
I share everything. I have nothing to hold back. I have nothing to hide. And I want to, I'm here for a purpose. I want to see people thrive. I want to see people succeed. So thanks for contributing
That's your
to that
invention.
today. Thanks everyone for listening to Dealer Talk with Jen Suzuki. Don't forget, my weekly live classes are designed to keep your team fired up, skilled up, and focused on results. Subscribe right now at edealersolutions.com. See ya!